Hello there. Recently I did a video about macro controls in modular. The idea was to modulate a whole bunch of parameters at the same time with a single control. In the previous video I did that by taking a static voltage from the quadrat here, sending it through a multiplier and out to a bunch of different destinations, and then I could change the voltage with this control and it would affect all of the parameters' destinations. I'm expanding on that idea and trying a new technique with a couple of modules that I got to produce a similar effect, but with a slider instead of a knob, and also to route to do two different sets of destinations based on a switch. So this kind of gives you something similar to scenes in Octatrack, where you can use the crossfader to slide back and forth and kind of morph from one set of parameters to another. It's more flexible, obviously, on the Octatrack because you have a lot of destinations without, with just internal routing and no cables, and you also have a lot more than just two sets of destinations. But I'm kind of taking that idea and seeing how I can do it in Eurorack to kind of do some cool performance transitions. So let's take a quick listen to what this is going to sound like. If you like what you hear, stick around to learn the explanation for how it works. Okay, so how did I do what I just did? Well, there's two keys here. There's the voltage controlled transitions module from ADAC system, and there's the vice versa from noise engineering. And these two in combination are allowing me to do this sort of Octatrack-like scene transitions. Let me tell you quickly what the voices you're hearing are. I've got two voices, Basimilis Ateritas Elia that's doing the drum part, and Manus Ateritas Elia that's doing sort of the synth bassline part. Basimilis is sequenced with grids, which is a clone of Mutable Instruments grids. And that's also using traffic, which allows three different trigger patterns to be summed together and sent to a single destination, but with different CV values for different parameters on each track. Pamela's Pro Workout is clocking everything. I'm using the Bard Quartet for the sort of arpeggio on the bass. Oh, also the drums are going through Mutable Instruments blades for filtering, and we'll see how that works with the transitions in a second. Okay, so here's the important part here. The VC transitions from ADAC system and the vice versa from noise engineering. Really, the secret is the VC transitions. What this does is it gives you 5 CV outputs, although I'm only using 4 here, and you'll see why in a second. And it gives you control over what their sort of minimum and maximum values are. All 5 of the CVs rather are controlled by from their minimum to maximum values by sliding this slider from left to right. At left, they're at their minimum position. At the right, they're at their maximum position. And then these rows here give you control over exactly what the minimum and maximum settings values are for each channel. So you can sort of attenuate the range of what you want. The knob on the left gives you control over the minimum position. So you could have some degree of voltage coming out even when the slider is all the way to the left. And then the right knob is span. So how much does it increase from its minimum position when the slider is all the way to the right? You also have CV in control if you want to remotely control the position of the slider, although for performance reasons, I prefer to use the slider. So this is kind of similar to what we were doing before in the previous video, where we would send a single set of voltages to a bunch of destinations. Like here's the mult, essentially. You get these 4 different destinations from this one module with the ranges controlled with the built-in attenuation. But what I wanted to be able to do is to kind of switch back and forth and have the outputs control one set of things at one point and then have them control a completely different set of things at another point. And the way that I am doing that is using this noise engineering vice versa switch. So this is a pretty flexible sequential switch. If you haven't used a sequential switch before, what they do is they take an input and they send it to an output. And every time a trigger happens or some sort of signal, it advances to the next output so that the same signal is going to a bunch of different destinations, and you change in your sequencer with voltage control which destination it's going to, and they just go one after another. This is kind of an interesting one because it actually has 8 inputs and 8 outputs, and they kind of correspond to each other. So the first input is sent to the first output initially, and then every time you advance the sequence, the first input will go to the second input will go to the third input will go to the fourth input, and so on, and they keep cycling around. The other cool thing about this is that it allows you to sort of group the inputs and outputs differently. So you can see there's this little switch here that says group 842. And the way that what that does is it allows you to have the full cycle of 8 go all the way around, or you can group it into 2 sets of 4 input, 4 output switches. So it would go like 1, 2, 3, 4, and then cycle back to the top. So you can do essentially 2 different sequences that loop. And in the bottom position, which is what I'm using here, is 4 groups of 2 inputs and outputs. And so you can kind of see the on the panel, the lines show you those divisions where each 2 pairs of inputs and outputs is a separate group. And this is what gives me my ability to switch the destinations of the outputs from the VC transitions. So I can manually switch back and forth between the 2 group positions by pressing this advanced switch. You can see the LEDs are alternating between 1, 3, 5, 7 and 2, 4, 6, 8. And then these outputs are going to different destinations based on which of the 2 groups I have set. So here's where the destinations are connected to. For the first group, 1, 3, 5, 7, we're going to the harmonic input on the Basimulis Teratosilia. That's going to change some of the sort of harmonic content of the drums. The second output is going to the high pass filter frequency cutoff on blades. That's going to sort of drop or bring out the bass frequencies in the drums as the value goes up. And then I've got the profundity on the third channel on Manus Teratosilia. That's just going to kind of change the timbre of the bass synth sound. And then finally, I have on the fourth output, the regen on Desmodus Versio, which is the noise engineering reverb that I'm applying to all of this. In the second position, 2, 4, 6, 8, we're modulating things on the same 4 modules, but a different input. So the second one is the wave folding on Basimulis, which is going to kind of make everything grittier. On blades, we're changing the routing. So blades is a stereo filter, and in the first mode, we're just using the high pass on sort of the left side. But in this second group of switch outputs, we're sending the first filter side into the second side. And the second side is set up in kind of a mixed low pass band pass mode with the wave folding on and the frequency kind of middle of the range, and then the resonance and drive cranked up a bit. So it's going to really dirty up the drums because they're getting high pass filtered, and then they're also getting like a lot of resonance and wave folding. Third, we're going to the smash input of Manus, which is just a kind of a different timbral change. And then finally, we're going to the size on Desmodus Versio, which is increasing like the size of the virtual space that the reverb is creating. So again, let's listen to those transitions and hear what it sounds like. So start with group A. 1, 3, 5, 7. So we're high pass filtering the drums, adding some timbral changes on the bass, and adding a lot of regen on the reverb to increase the length of the reverb tail. And I can slowly go back, but this is, the performance aspect of it. So I can slide, or I can quickly move from one side to another to dramatically change the sound in sort of rhythmic ways. I can pump along with the beat. But I think most often you'd hear kind of a slow transition into the effect, and then a drop to bring it out. There's that second group again, 2, 4, 6, 8. So I think this is a relatively straightforward but pretty powerful technique. Just as the macro system was that I presented in the last video, this gives you the same idea, although I think the slider is a big improvement over a knob because of that ability to quickly slide to the left kind of instantly. Gives you that drop. That's pretty hard to do on a knob that has like, you know, about 200 degrees of turn to go all the way from the max value to the minimum value in a single instant. Harder to do. And then of course we get, you know, two sets of destinations. So if I wanted to set up a song that has two different major transitions in it, I can do this now without having to repatch anything. So that's it. That's what I wanted to show you. I think there's probably a lot of other modules that you can do this with. There's certainly a lot of sequential switches and other ways that you could sort of route signals to different destinations based on a toggle. And of course, you could involve multiples here to send all of these things to even more destinations. I just did it with 4 and 4 to keep things simple. That's it. Thanks so much for watching.